Mario Party 1 really fascinates me. No matter where the series has gone, whether it's been the traditional board gameplay, the Cars style, or even when they're trying something completely different like say in the 3DS titles for example, no matter the approach, there has never been a game in this series that has ever felt similar to the original. Sure, Mario Party 2 comes the closest since it obviously borrows a lot from the stuff that Mario Party 1 did, but Mario Party 2 refines so many things that it still feels very different from the game it copied from. To me, this game is an anomaly and very much in its own bubble, and that's not because of first game syndrome or anything, which I mean it does have, and it has it pretty badly too in some cases. Hell, its most infamous screw-up has led to a situation where outside of a remake, this game will never see a re-release, even for whatever form the Virtual Console takes next. It's definitely rough around the edges, kind of sharp even, but that's not why I feel the vibe is different with this one than it is the others. To me, I feel it's due to a certain focus this game has. I'm sure you've heard the term Mario Party, the series that ruins friendships. The idea that the game encourages players to be assholes to each other while playing. And while it's often said jokingly, and quite frankly would be an over-exaggeration for most entries in the series, well, jokingly or not, it had to come from somewhere. And after replaying this game again, I remember just where it comes from, cause out of every entry in this 2-decade-long series, Mario Party 1 is probably the most dickish and mean-spirited one going. But I'll save that for the end. So, being the first game, it set up a lot of the groundwork. The goal is to be the person with the most coins and stars at the end of a set amount of turns. Stars hold more value and can generally be bought from Toad for 20 coins apiece. You get to Toad by moving across one of the 8 different boards Mario Party 1 offers, and you know, that's something to really compliment. Most games in the series has 6, 7 if you're lucky, but here we are, first game, and they're coming out with 8 out of the gate? That's something to be praised, actually. Not to mention, some of them offer more than what's just considered a standard. In most cases, it's all about reaching Toad to get a star, but how you get to him is sometimes different. As I mentioned, some boards are what fans consider traditional. Toad will be at random parts of the map and will move each time you buy a star, whereas other times, say like Mario's Rainbow Castle, Toad is stationary and is always at the end of the map, ready to greet the player who reaches him, though he'll alternate between Bowser, someone you don't want to run into. Now, not every board is a winner, mind you, but I do enjoy that some of them have distinct approaches. It's surprisingly something the series would drop for a few entries, and would stick to the style of Toad warping everywhere. It's kind of weird, actually. Another weird omission in some of the future titles is the specific Bowser events for each board. Sure, there's always been Bowser spaces which debut here, but alongside that, Bowser actually creeps around on each of the boards, and generally does something unique each time. Granted, it's always something bad that hinders players, but it does add a lot of charm to these boards and his character. Maybe they felt having both Bowser on the board and Bowser spaces were going overboard? I don't know, but I know one thing, I'm probably in the minority on this, but I feel this getting in the axe was a bit of a shame. But, oh well. So as you move around the board after hitting the dice block between the numbers 1 and 10, you could land on a variety of spaces. Blue spaces which will grant you 3 coins, red on the other hand will take away 3. The green question mark spaces are event spaces that will cause something to happen on the board. Sometimes they're good outcomes, other times they might hinder players. There's also the usually dreaded chance time space, where a player will hit 3 blocks that leads to 2 players potentially swapping coins or stars with each other, or one player having to give coins or stars to someone else. Easily a game changer. As I mentioned earlier, the Bowser spaces will summon Bowser in a random event that usually doesn't end well for the player, or possibly everyone. And lastly, the 2 spaces exclusive to Mario Party 1, being the 1-player minigames, which is as simple as it sounds. Land on and you'll play a 1-player minigame for a chance to win some coins. Some may think it's a bit of a pace breaker, but I kind of like it. Some of them are piss easy, but some of them can actually be pretty challenging. Either way, any chance to win more coins isn't ever a bad thing in my books. And then the mushroom space. Land on this and you'll have a 50-50 chance of either getting a super mushroom, which will let you roll again in that same turn, or if you get the poison mushroom, you'll lose your next turn. Another element of Mario Party 1 I'm shocked never made a return. Keep in mind that's a bit of a running theme here, people. Sure, losing an entire turn is pretty brutal, but I'm sure future games could have refined it where instead of losing a turn, your next turn would be a roll between 1 and 3. At least that's what I would have done anyway. Mario Party 1 also introduces the idea of an item shop for the series. Not like the one you would see in 2, 3, and 4, but buy actual items such as different dice blocks, money banks, game boards, etc. Again, why they got rid of this I'll never know, cause to me, these random dice blocks that you could choose whether you wanted to use them in game or not added so much variety to the gameplay. It's not like this was game-breaking or even a flawed feature. All it did was add a bit of spice to things. And if you didn't like it, well, don't use them. I don't like the fact that they got rid of this kind of stuff at all. Sure, some of it might have got repurposed like the warp block, but again, I just don't get it. And I could say that for a few things about Mario Party 1, as there's a lot of good things to like about it. And it's such a shame we lost a good amount of it going into the second game, some being permanently lost. Either way, this entry does offer quite a lot of stuff to like. But as we all know, this is far from a perfect game, and definitely a game Nintendo probably doesn't remember fondly when it caused them to lose a class action lawsuit from several people due to certain minigames giving players blisters. Yeah, it's pretty common knowledge at this point, but certain minigames required you to rotate the joystick as quickly as possible. And while I'm sure Nintendo figured people would just use their thumbs instead of palms, or at the very least the N64 controllers wouldn't lead to self-harm like that, but it did. And after losing the case, Nintendo had to start sending out gloves as a way of preventing any more injuries injuries that could lead to them being sued more. That's a huge fuck up. Obviously unintended, but that's probably the first time where people actually tore skin off their palms playing a fucking video game. Not to mention, this game probably killed a lot of N64 controllers in its day. Usually not a major problem, but N64 controllers were prone to having loose joysticks due to extended use. So having a game where it's common to have the player spin it as much as possible, and it's like no wonder we'll never see a re-release. Of course though, that's not the only issue. Mario Party 1's minigames are pretty hit or miss. Some are actually pretty good, with my favorites being Mushroom Mix-Up, Bumper Balls, Bobsled Run, and Bombs Away. Obviously there were some winners here, considering Mario Party 2 would borrow or refine a good amount of what was already introduced here. But alongside those palm-killing minigames, there were a good amount of stinkers too. Usually any of the 4-player work-together minigames were always kind of boring, and mostly pointless since it means nothing would change placement-wise. Then there's some that even to this day I still can't get to work properly, like Castaways. And an odd choice, but sometimes depending on the minigame, usually 2 versus 2 or 1 versus 3, it's not uncommon to actually have coins deducted from you if you lose. Yeah, that's something I completely forgot about. What a brutal mechanic that is. But it doesn't stop there, and we finally come back to that Mario Party ruins friendships trope. Or how I said this game can be straight up dickheaded at points. And that's due to the fact that some of these minigames are just plain old fucking cruel. Mario Party 2 onwards, there would never be a time where you would lose coins in a standard minigame. Outside of Battle, Duel, or Bowser minigames, that just doesn't happen. Here though, not only can you potentially lose coins if you lose, some of these minigames are all about losing coins. For example, Bowl Over a Crane game. In Mario Party 2, the goal is to knock down or successfully grab each player for a shot to win 10 coins. Here though, oh no, nope. You're targeting players this time, because if you want to win coins, then you had better take out at least one person and take a certain amount of coins from them. Otherwise you'll lose coins, and because of it, it's just evil and cutthroat. But I'd say the most cruel example of this minigame was called Bash and Cash, where one person has to play in the Bowser suit, and the other 3 have hammers in an attempt to hit the person in the Bowser suit, knocking out coins. A completely one-sided minigame as the Bowser suit wearer can't defend themselves. The best they can do is jump and run away. So you've got a minigame where one player is going to lose no matter what, and the 3-player team has everything to gain. They can't be attacked. Hell, the Bowser Space version is the same game, but the players attack with no chance of actually getting coins that the player loses. It all goes to Bowser. That's so mean, so cruel, so cutthroat, and just singling out one person. And while objectively it might not be good game design and too punishing, but is it weird that I somehow kind of like this brutality? Yes, these specific minigames are completely unfair, and just totally rigged since that player can't win. All he or she can do is just hope that they lose only a little amount. But in its own sick way, I think that kind of adds to the competitive nature, and provides more of those fuck you moments that can lead to a lot of laughs and a great time. Granted, you've got to be playing with the right people. If someone gets pissy or is a poor sport, well, that'll kill the fun right there. But with the right people, I think being able to screw players over other than stealing coins or stars on the board can actually be a really fun time. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird and just too optimistic, but despite its flaws, I think Mario Party 1 is a pretty solid title. Not the best in the series by any means, but for a good chunk of it, it's still pretty solid. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's so unique from the rest of the series due to it doing so many things differently. But unlike the more out there entries like the Cars style or something like Star Rush, this still plays like how everyone wants Mario Party to play as. So I'd say it's worth playing. I just wish it wasn't so expensive to own now. That's probably its biggest sin. Outside of emulation, it's either physical or bust. And for each console generation that passes, that's getting harder and harder to justify buying. But if you're a big fan of this series, well, I'd say buy it now while it's still the cost of regular retail. God knows what this will be like in another 10 to 15 years.